And we'll mute everyone when you're not talking. Doesn't mean that you have to stay muted, but welcome, welcome. We're going to talk about honoring your resources, honoring our resources as women. Hello, so many new faces. I really, it's so good to meet you all. And if you are able to come on video, I'd love to see your faces here. I will be recording in speaker view, so just know that the replay will go out to those who have signed up for this event. And so if you decide to come on and share something, we love that, because we love authentic shares. And we love modeling that it's okay to share authentically. And so, you know, if you decide to do that, it'll be picked up on the recording, just so you know. Uh-oh, no, we lost someone as soon as I said that. Hope I didn't scare them off. Awesome. Okay, so some introductions are happening. Love that, love that. Yeah, let's also say where we're checking in from, because women and land are so intricately connected. So we have Charleston, South Carolina, living in upstate South Carolina, feeling open and ready, joining from Botswana. Awesome, awesome. International attendance here. So good. Colorado between Denver and Boulder. Hello, here comes Audrey. Wonderful. Checking in from Tucson. So good. Western North Carolina. Who's that? Martha. We must be neighbors. Wonderful. So yeah, I'm Sarah Poet. Thank you for being here. This is the first time I'm meeting some of you. I'm pretty excited. I'm checking in excited. And I'm also checking in with a fierce love today. As I was preparing this morning, I couldn't quite, you know how we get the feels and we don't know exactly what they are. I was feeling really fierce. And it's because I love this topic so much, and I'm so passionate about getting resources in the hands of women. And I'm passionate about women knowing how valuable our inherent resources are. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for signing up for this. This is going to be an interactive, probably hour and a half. And I'll just share with you now, like, what that arc is going to look like, so you can be prepared and, you know, setting structure. We like to honor structure. We keep losing one friend. She's dropping off. Maybe she's having a hard time connecting. So we're going to start by just setting some space here in a moment and doing a little bit of breathing and centering, so that we are regulating our nervous systems before we talk about this topic of women and resource allocation, because it can be a triggering topic, quite honestly. We've had a lot of things interrupt our access to resources over the last few millennia. So we'll do some setting of space and breathing, and then I'll introduce some topics tonight. I'm going to talk about structure and flow, which is a current offering that I have open. This does correlate to structure and flow, and it's a nice entry point into that program, into that system. Maybe you've heard me talking about it, maybe you haven't. So I'll introduce that, and you know, no pressure, and you might just really be in the mood for that kind of experience. And so we're starting as a group doing that January 2nd, and it's on sale now. And I have about 11 books left. So I want to tell you about that. And then we're going to get further into some exercises. So what I recommend is that you have a journal at the ready. I think most of you do. And I'm going to be asking you reflective questions. You can be writing about them in your journal and also sharing in the chat. You can share in the chat whenever you want. Like, if something sparks for you, just go ahead and share your thoughts, and I'll try my best to catch those. I'm pretty used to managing the Zoom and catching that. So I also have a child in the house and 3 animals. So, it's evening, we're moms, we're juggling. And so if you hear any other noise, I'm just going to be okay with it. And please, just forgive me. But I was saying, as I ask a question, I encourage you to go ahead and write down the question in your journal too, because I'm going to ask some big questions. I ask big questions that you might need more time later to reflect on. You might want to take more time later to reflect on it. Everyone, I want to introduce Audrey. She's getting settled over there. I'm surprising her by saying that. But Audrey is my right hand woman and my left hand woman and all of those things. And so Audrey knows all about structure and flow. She knows all about my business, Embodied Breath, and she's going to be traveling with the group that's starting Structure and Flow. So Audrey might chime in here this evening with something, and just wanted to let you know of that connection. And Audrey has a lot of experience with all of these topics that we're talking about as well. So, all right, let's go ahead and set space. And by that, I mean, I'm going to just do a little intention setting. We could call it prayer. We could call it calling in our sacred families, that kind of thing. But I don't need to go too far into that this evening. But what I really do want to encourage is that, or what I want to intend is that I personally state the intention that this call is really about enhancing women's access to resources, honoring of our sacred resources, elevating the feminine at the time on the planet where the feminine is elevating, is coming back into right relationship with self, with body, with resources. It is my intention that this call be a sacred space toward that evolution of women knowing the true value and honor of their resources. So I'm just going to pause and breathe with that. And I welcome in the guardians of the truth, of the light, of unity. Beautiful. So now, women, what I would love to invite us to do is a square breathing exercise. And I'll explain it briefly if you've never seen it, or if you have. A square breath is just like what it sounds like. You're going to breathe in the direction of a square. You kind of hold that in your mind as you're breathing. And so when you start on one side, we're going to breathe to a count of 4 to start. You inhale for 4, and then across the square, you hold your breath, and then exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold your breath again. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. I'm going to lead it a few times at 4 seconds. And then I'm just going to set a timer and kind of set you free. And at that point, you might want to try to stretch to 5 or 6, or if you're used to it, you could go more than that. But 4 is a really nice place to start, because when we get to that holding of the breath, sometimes our nervous system start to freak out a little bit, and that's okay. And so if you can get to like 2 seconds and then you need to breathe, do what you need to do. Okay. So this really helps to regulate the parasympathetic, which we want to do as we're talking about this topic of women and resources. So letting all the air out of the body. And then we'll begin inhaling to a count of 4. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Inhale 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes, and you can just continue with that rhythm, just noticing, just sinking in. Continuing with that. Great. One more minute. You can even see, you don't have to pressure yourself, but see if you can maybe extend to 5 seconds or 6 seconds if you choose. Audrey, give me a thumbs up if you can still hear me. I just changed my microphone. Okay, great. So thank you so much. Okay, so you can come on back to the space. So in the chat box, go ahead and share, what are your greatest resources? As the woman that you are, what would you say your greatest resources are? There's no wrong answer, right? We're just going to talk about resources tonight. So let's just presence with, what are our greatest resources? You may have seen this in an email that I wrote, but a few years ago, I sold my house, and I used a friend and her husband as the realtor team. And afterwards, they gave me a card that said, thank you for trusting us with your greatest resource. And I was like, I get it. I get what you mean. And not my greatest resource. Like, I am my greatest resource, right? So what what are our greatest resources? Okay, I'm going to read some from the chat. My energy, my joy, my love, my expression, my creativity. I would say that my greatest resources right now are my breath and my presence. Whew. My mind, my family, loyalty, time, energy, sexual energy, attention, body. Yes, yes, queens. Okay, I love it. So there's a lot of empowerment in these answers. That's, I would judge, I would say. And I love that. I love that we're already saying like my energy, my body, right? Absolutely, our greatest resources. So yes, yes, keep the answers coming if you'd like to. Um, so tonight we're going to talk about our greatest resources. We're going to talk about how our resources have been undervalued. And we're going to look at how we allocate these resources. Okay. Lots of seeds planted tonight, lots of food for thought. Although it might not be evening everywhere you all are. So I might say tonight, but some checking in from elsewhere. So I'll say this. So let's just like look at history for a minute. Like let's give some context. I think everyone here knows that women's resources have been diverted, right? To use for other purposes, to use for energy, labor, sometimes thanklessly, sometimes not paid, undervalued, all of that. And so for thousands of years now, not just women's energy, but the feminine energy, like the archetypal feminine, has been, we say that it's undervalued, right? Like in terms of money, the feminine and women have like not been given as much money, like not been valued as much like that. But what I think every woman knows is that what I'll call like the whole patriarchal machine would never have run if it hadn't been for feminine energy. So it was like the taking of the feminine energy and the what I would say like siphoning of the feminine energy, the diverting of the feminine energy and of women's energy, women's bodies, women's resources. And also we can apply that to the land, right? Like I think the women and the land can relate to one another in terms of resources being taken out, but not replenished back in. And so we have a culture of very, very tired women. We have a culture of women that generally give because we're caring beings, right? But we give and we give, or sometimes we give in the hopes that we will receive, and then we find out that we don't, and so we end up depleted. Like I have ended up depleted many times, like in my net sum of resources, both internal and external. As a woman, I've found myself depleted. And then, through the things that we just mentioned, like the creativity, the taking back of the feminine, the taking back of sexual power, like we learn to cultivate those resources again and come into that self-worth and self-sovereignty and value. But some of these words that I'm using are also kind of like conceptual, but how do we actually know like when we have self-worth? How do we know when we have value? I don't exactly have an answer for you. I wish I did, but it's just kind of like a question that I'm putting out there. And tonight, one of the things I hope to do is to give you some ways that we can actually look at like these feminine resources in a more tangible way. So just kind of a funny story that I told earlier, because I did this webinar at 12 o'clock as well. And in some ways, I feel like that was my rehearsal, and now here we are. But this morning, I was driving my 12, almost 13-year-old son to school, which is a great time for great conversations. And he let me know that his stepmother watched Bridgerton. And I didn't even know that my child knew about the show Bridgerton. Have you watched Bridgerton on Netflix? So I have. And I was like, dear God, have you seen that show? Please tell me you haven't seen that show, because there's some really hot sex in it. And so I was like, yeah, your stepmom watches that show, but you haven't seen it, right? Please tell me. And okay, someone else is coming in. I'm just gonna bring them on in. And so let me pause here. Hello, welcome. And he said, no, I haven't seen it. But the way he responded, I was like, you do know that it's a sexy show, you little 13-year-old. So yes, I see that question, and I will address it. So I quickly kind of, excuse me, changed the subject from the hot sex that happens in Bridgerton to why the show even was like really, really relevant at all, which is this premise, which, you know, he like eye rolls and he's like, my mom always talking about feminine and masculine. But the premise of the show, I can't, if anybody knows like when and where the show takes place, please, I'm not a historian. The premise of the show is that there's this annual event that all of these young women are preparing for, and their families are putting all of these resources, money resources, time, energy, into preparing these young women for this presentation of themselves, where they will go to this like dance and event and like the series of social events, and they will be chosen by the men. In no way can they approach the men, you know, so they just have to like look very clean, very proper, very wealthy. Like they have to look wealthy, they have to present in all of these ways, you know, where like, you know, voluptuousness and beauty, but they're not even allowed to know about their bodies. Like they don't know about sex. You know, they're very sheltered in that way. And so that's, you know, how my son and I ended up talking about this show is like, women were there for the men. I mean, it was culturally set up. The show's so good. It's a great love story. It's you know, it's hot, and this historical point is really well made. So my point in sharing that is that we have thousands of years and countless examples of how, you know, women, our bodies, our resources were like, you know, there for men. And that was the cultural kind of construction of that idea. So there's a question in the chat. Sarah, can we please explore some examples around how the feminine energy of our world has been siphoned? For sure. So a really concrete example is, I mean, this is happening all around us. It's not like some secretive thing. It's like every example that we can think of a woman depleting herself thanklessly is this. So like a woman, you know, some of this timeline is like some old, some new. So present day, a woman going to work doing the same exact work, if not more, than a man getting paid less, right? So there's so much energy being put in, but it's being like taken advantage of without there being reciprocity. All forms of rape, of non-consensual like taking, right, is the siphoning of feminine energy. What's coming up right now, I would say, like the cultural repression of creativity, the cultural repression of things like, the value of caring, like teaching, nursing, social work, like, things like that, that are careers that are caring and caregiving based, that were traditionally women held. They're not valued with the dollar, like with the currency exchange. And so that is inherently depleting. I was a teacher for 15 years. I worked so much and gave so much of my heart, like bringing hungry children lunches, like we just do these things. And there's not like recognition, reciprocity. It just counts on that energy being just given. And so what has been quantifiably valued or monetized has been things like that could be produced, right? Or so women, we get into pardon me, we get into utilizing our energy. By default, we go to productivity until we like train ourselves out of it. So let's just pop this in the chat. Like, how did you learn you were worthy? That question just came off the top of my head. So we're in the flow now. How did you learn that you were worthy? And of course, that's a very big answer, but like, what's one way that you learned that you were valuable or worthy? You can interpret that question any way you want. I didn't learn, I knew. Okay, so breathing into my lower chakras, like teaching myself, it sounds like. Okay, I knew since I was born. Yay. Okay, I learned when I began my journey on self-trust. For me, it began to drop in as I was doing inner healing work around the God wound. Yep. Okay, I was raised in a conservative religion, and I was told that any worth I had came from God. And the last few years have been a journey of owning my worth just because I am. Yes, God wound. Okay, another one. That's a hard question for me to answer. When I was shown Mother, Father, God, I don't know how to put that into words. Okay, and yes, the person that said I knew since I was a child said I knew that others didn't know it. Right, so let me kind of ask another question. What did society tell you that you needed to, let me reframe. What did society tell you to do in order to be worthy or claim worth or value? How have you gone about securing resources? How have you gone about proving your value? Like, what did society teach to you? For example, I learned to climb career ladders. Like that, like if I wanted to be someone or, be a leader, like there was this map in schools of like, you can climb this ladder, right? So that's one formula that the world gives you. I was told that my worth depended on my productivity, activity, achievement, accolades, etc. Yeah, yeah. Be like everyone else, be normal, quote unquote. Social conditioning and being an achiever. Yeah, lack of achievement messaging. Never say no. So children, to your male partner, wanting sex, being a good mother and businesswoman, etc. Yeah, thank you. Society told me to obey and to conform and to shut my mouth, and in order to be worthy to follow a path it was approved of. Right. And so we do that. Like we try to be good, right? We try to be good and we try to get love in that way because we think like love from parents, love from partner, love from God is going to come from that performance and that like behavior. And in the process of doing so, we devalue our resources inherently. And so there's absolutely no shame in this conversation. This is about, you know, bringing it back, which I can tell we're all on that journey already. Yeah, I wrote down, of course we undervalue our resources. Like, of course we do as women, like, because we're redefining this. Like no one, oh my gosh, this is so big. No one in the external is responsible for sharing with you what your worth and value are. No one. Not a partner, not a job, not a parent, no one. No one. And when we get that, and we really decide to like love our resources, we just changed the game. We shifted paradigms. Do you hear that? Like we shift the paradigms because we're saying we're not looking outward to the standards external anymore. We're looking internally. And so when we know our value, whatever that means to us, like we're not going to solidify that tonight, but when we know our value conceptually, and then, you know, the value of our time, our like the dollar amount value on our time, those kinds of things, when we know the value of our resources, then that will be reflected in the external. Like we are the ones who are going to redefine that. So resources, I define, okay, actually, I want to just say that last part again. What I'm concerned with is primarily these internal resources. Internal resources being your time, your energy, your attention, where your focus is going. My voice is tired, y'all. And with that, I would say the mind. So what the mind is doing, the quality of the mind, the quality of the thoughts. For example, you know, a clear and focused and articulate mind can, you know, engage differently than like a preoccupied, anxious mind, right? So the quality of your mind is going to enhance your resources. And then of course the body, And so, you know, what we choose to do with our time, anything that we choose to do with our time, but these are our like inherent resources. And they're the ones that we can create our life with, right? Because if I have time, I can decide, well, am I gonna, you know, work and create something? Am I gonna make art? Am I going to dance? Am I going to, you know, take a nap? Like, what am I gonna do with this time? Because it's such a valuable resource to me. Okay, and so we can actually pretty concretely, I'm going to tell you about it in a moment, we're going to experience it in a moment, begin to take back these relatively like, you know, previously nebulous things. You know, external resources would be things like money, house, clothing, partner, you know, the external. Not to say that those aren't important, right? But in this call, I just want to encourage us to look first at the internal, so that the internal can begin to reflect to the external. The internal can begin to reflect and create our life. Okay. So I'm going to take just a few moments to tell you about Structure and Flow, which is on sale now. And Structure and Flow right now is packaged as, you get this 90-day book in the mail. I'm going to show you. You get this 90-day book that's like a planner. Okay. And we're going to use one of the components of this book tonight. And how Structure, well, let me finish that. So it's the planner. And then I have a whole online course that I recorded that's like meditations, topics, resources that will walk you through the 90 days, the 12 weeks. And then also we're going to do a Facebook group with live calls. So 3 live calls over the 90 days, and the Facebook group, and Audrey and I will be in the Facebook group. So if you're using it and you have an aha moment, which is going to happen all the time, you go to the Facebook group, you share, women talk about it, beautiful things happen. There's group alchemy, things happen when women get together. So for the last few years, I wrote this in January of 2020. I essentially wrote it because I needed it. It kept like downloading in, and I felt like, you know, God or whatever we call it was saying like, you better write this down. So I did not create this. I'm the co-creator of this, but I did. I kept writing it down, and I wrote like a book intro, and I've been using it for like 2 years on and off, and I've used it with groups of women, and I've always talked about it in 2 primary ways. One is time and energy optimization, which as women, we're like, yay, we can get a little caught up in productivity like that, but we want to optimize our time and energy because it's valuable. The other thing that's cool about Structure and Flow that I've talked a lot about, I'm going to be talking about it more next week because I recorded some fun videos on it, is that Structure and Flow looks at energy through masculine and feminine. So if you follow my work for that topic at all, we have this inner feminine and masculine, and it's rebalancing on the planet, it's rebalancing in relationships, and it's rebalancing in us. And so Structure and Flow is my offering where like I'm really looking at the energetics of masculine and feminine within. But then this year, I just got on this resource bent because I was like, wait a second. Structure and Flow is really about optimizing resources. And for all the reasons I just said, like knowing the value and the worth of our inherent resources. So in this way that like week by week, day by day, you show up in this system and it just like leads you through it, you naturally begin to make choices that optimize your resources. And then you begin to like become more empowered and more empowered and more empowered because you're looking at where your energy goes, you're looking at where your time goes, and you're making choices in alignment with what you want. So it really is a very nice structural support to enhance what we're talking about. Audrey, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit so you can just shake your head, but is there anything you would add that I missed? Can't hear you. No. Can see your lips moving. No. That's weird. Can anyone else hear Audrey? Is it just mine? No, okay. Oh, darn. Okay, maybe I'll move on. You can add things to the chat. You can try again and just like chime in anytime. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Okay. So Structure and Flow is on sale now through the 17th while supplies left, because I have 11 books left that are printed. And it's still 30% off for 2 more days. Okay, so I'll send an email about that tonight. All right, now for the interactive part. All right, everybody grab your journals, please. Okay, so like I said in the beginning, go ahead and write down the questions while you answer them in case you want to go back to it. So I want you to just riff, or I want to invite you to just riff on your heart's desires, the desires of your heart, like the deep ones, you know, which might be different than like if I ask you what you'd like to manifest, right? Like a manifestation list can sometimes be kind of material, not to say that your heart's desires can't be material, but what does your heart want? Maybe you have some of it now, maybe, you know, we're all still alive, we're all still like on two legs and growth oriented, and so I think it's okay to have desires. It's great to be satisfied in the present moment. It's great to have desires. We're not stagnant. And then at some point, just like drop a few in the chat, please, just to kind of keep that going, keeping the energy in the collective as well. Heart's desires. I do find in working with women over the years that it is very difficult for us to name our desires a lot of times. We have to like practice doing that. Because in a world that told you how to achieve and how to conform, you have to get used to also saying, wait, I want something. I deeply want something. So beautiful, a deep, loving community. I feel that. Creating income as a spiritual teacher and energy healer. You can do it. You can do it, I know it. Financial resources that allow me to use my time in a way that feeds my soul. Yes, it is possible. Yeah. This is popping right now too. You know, we have some collective desires as women. You know, we have some collective desires to like really have choice, really have access to financial resources, really have access to living in the exact truth of who we are and earning a living, you know, being able to speak our voice and having our resources be secure. And very, very recently in our human timelines, you know, in this country, in these cultures that we have, women couldn't do that. You know, I'll share like my own mother, her financial resources would have been okay for her to support herself and my sisters and I. And yet her belief system was that she could not leave. She could not leave an abusive relationship. She really believed, and it took me years and years to figure this out. She believed that her resources, her access to resources was tied up in that relationship. And so she overlooked what hurt her, and she overlooked like the loss of self, you know, in order to have access to secure resources. And if you think about it, like when women just in very recent decades couldn't like get a bank account or a library card without their husband's signature, like couldn't own a house, you know, it was strategic for a woman to be concerned with her access to her resources. But in the culture, it also made sense that she couldn't quite be the fullness of her true self, because that would sacrifice her access to her resources, right? So this is very, very recent. I feel like, you know, like the walk of owning our truth and knowing that like we can live, we can win, you know, doesn't mean that we won't still be like targeted, or people won't try to take down women who are trying to do these things. Because when we are owning our voice, working as the light workers, the energy workers, like saying, you know, I can make a living being authentically me, guess what we're doing? We're changing paradigms, and we're saying, um, like, we're not threatened by that stuff anymore, which is really threatening to an agenda that wants us to continue to give away our energy. So this is why we need to do this in community. This is why we need each other. All right. So my heart's desires are to regain physical health, vitality, stability, to open my heart to connect with my children and my partner more, to be able to get out and form community around my family, to never be alone and homeless or too sick to care for myself and my children ever again. Thank you so much for sharing that. Your mom's story I can relate to deeply in a way. Yeah. Yeah. And I too made decisions about men based on how safe I thought I would be with my resources. I mean, we do this. We do this. And if we're, you know, trying, this is like the feminist movement, you know, like we tried to not be fully dependent on men. And so what did women do? They were like, we're going to go work, we're going to go earn it all ourselves, we're not going to need anybody. Right? And that's when like the achievement of things like really sprouted, because we were going to do it all on our own, which is a whole other thing, which is why we need to rebalance feminine and masculine now. Okay, so we have heart's desires. Okay, so here's the next bit. Audrey actually made me this laminate that I'm going to show you. So this is an aspect of structure and flow, and we do this weekly. We do this on Sundays. Actually, no, I'm not going to explain how it's supposed to work right now. I'm going to share how I want you to use it at first. Okay, so can everyone see that without a glare? There are 7 circles. Okay, 7 circles. Well, I can't figure out how to move it. 7 circles. And they go 1 through 7 this way, okay? And what I want you to do is think of all the places you give your energy, the people you give your energy to, the activities, the work. Draw these out, okay? And this is like what's closest to home, okay? This is like the center of your life. And then this is like what gets further away, okay? So for example, if you work 40 hours a week right now, that's a big part of your life. So you could like put that down here. If you once in a while go to a yoga class and you love yoga, but you hardly do it, it would probably be out here somewhere right now. Okay, so I want you to, we're going to do this twice. And the first time I want you to just put into these circles where you use your energy. Where do you allocate your resources? Where do you currently allocate your resources? Audrey said in the chat, this is what I was going to talk about. Okay, good. Okay, and as you are taking a moment to finish that up, I want you to circle the things on there that like you really don't like. You don't like the way it is. So the things that are in contrast right now to how you want to allocate your resources, or those things are in contrast to your heart's desires. Okay, so this is your snapshot of like where things are right now, where your resources are being allocated right now. Okay. And in structure and flow, we talk about boundaries in terms of clarity. So I'm going to tell you in just a moment how we actually use these circles in structure and flow. Boundaries are different from clarity in my mind because for me as a woman and as a woman who has had things taken from me, and I have traumas around things being taken from me and resources being taken from me, when I set a boundary feels harsh and protective. It feels like I need to fight to hold that person or thing or idea away from me. That pushing and fighting requires more energy. So when we are in a trauma response or self-protective and boundarying, we're probably in fight or flight and we're probably depleting energy. So what we practice in structure and flow is different than boundaries. I like to get away from the word boundaries as much as we can. And what we practice is energetic clarity. It's just energetic clarity. What my priorities are, where I'm giving my time, where I'm not giving my time. So I'm going to share a story about something that happened when I first started using these, like within the first 2 weeks in January of 2020. And then I'll have you redraw your circles so you can just listen for a moment. But this will give you a good idea of what I mean about the clarity and how to use the circles. So in January of 2020, I had just moved to houses. I was very deep in like sacred feminine circles and had gone through this priestess school. And so I had a lot of like very close female friends. And we would just, talk about the things that the great mystery was unfolding to us, like women do, like a lot of feminine energy. And a lot of like tracking the mystery and talking about families and things like that. So there was this one woman and we were good friends and we used WhatsApp for communication. And we would leave each other like 15, 20-minute voice messages on WhatsApp. And I would see these voice messages come in, like, and maybe we would go like back and forth even like throughout the day. So total time could have been like 1 to 2 hours per day in these conversations total. And here I was like an entrepreneur, business is still baby business. And I have these clients that I'm trying to get to, and I have these business goals that I'm trying to get to. And one day I was getting really mad at her. Like, I was like, I'm going to have to set a big fucking boundary. I'm going to like, and that's maybe the way I am. I'm like, okay, this is starting to just fester in me. I'm going to have to guard my time. Okay, that's how I felt. But structure and flow had just like started to land in my life. And so what I did was, okay, so to start, oh, come on, light. I had her defaulting like probably down here. Like she was just always there. And I was always like answering right away. Right. Then I was like, wait a minute. my priority is this business and my child. Okay, so I started to order these accordingly. And I was like, okay, this is my child. These are my current clients, right? And I put her in circle 5. Okay. She didn't know I was doing this. She had no idea. And what I started to do was align my time in my day according to my energetic clarity about what I wanted and needed and what felt good. And what felt good was serving my clients who were paying me, right? Like they were leaving me WhatsApp messages. Why am I listening to this other casual message before I'm getting back to my clients? Like, doesn't even make sense. So I just started doing things in the order of these circles, and the entire situation corrected itself without any altercation. I just left more time between messages. I just answered when I wanted to, rather than feeling a pressure that because it was like dinging and notifying me that I had to just get back to it right away, right? Because we think we do. So that's a concrete example that I wanted to share, and then invite you to draw those circles again and lay it out like you want your time and energy to go according to those heart's desires, according to those inner truths. Okay, so it might be a little idealized right now. That's okay. Just lay it out in accordance with that clarity. If you were totally going to honor your resources, your time, your energy, your attention, what would that look like? This is great. I see a lot of very focused writing. I love it. So if you are considering structure and flow, I want to say this is why structure and flow works for every single woman, because you're constantly meeting yourself exactly where you are. Like, it's not me telling you how to use your energy so that you're optimizing, which so many systems are trying to tell you, right? This is so deep and so profound. And this is only like the tip of the iceberg for how you learn to reallocate your resources. Not to say we're not going to still learn hard lessons either, because maybe I'll share about that just a moment too while you're finishing that up. You know, life is always an evolution, like a consciousness evolution. We're on a path, like I said, as long as we're living, we are evolving, or I hope we are. If you're on this call, that's true for you. I know it. And so, you know, we're always cleaning up our energy. It's like I came from a background of like definitely being taught to give away first, right? And to like the energetics around what to count on men for was very, very cloudy because of my man and father trauma and God trauma and all that. So, not to say that I haven't gotten myself involved in some interesting male relationships where I, gave away my resources or like invested myself in a relationship. Even last year, like March to the end of 2020, I moved in with a man and then like learned very hard lessons about resources and resource allocation and had to move again. So this to say that it's always an evolution and we're still going to trip up, and it's not like we're going to know our ultimate value or we're going to have all the money in the bank, we're going to have that perfect relationship like right away. But day by day, choice by choice, we learn, and sometimes we learn the hard way by like, giving to a relationship that didn't give back in the end or something like that. But after that happened last year, I am so discerning about my energy now. And, like trip, get back up, trip, get back up. At this point, I'm so discerning about where I spend my time, who I give time, energy, and attention to, like relationships with men. I mean, I have friends who are out there like dating. Is this my man? Is this my man? Is this my man? And that time and investment in, anyway, I just am so discerning that like, it's not at all something that I will like, for me would be a waste of time doing. So like we all have our priorities, and over time we're saying yes to those priorities and those heart's desires as we get more and more and more clear on them. And then we're becoming increasingly discerning about how we are giving our time, our energy, our bodies to, to others, especially in those places where we're looking for value or looking for safety or looking for reassurance, right? So those places of exchange where we're like, oh, I hope that if I give this, I get something in return. And we become women who are much more discerning. We're saying, I know the value of my resources. I know the value of my time. I know the value of my time, so I don't work for free, right? I know the value of my time, and so I learn to scale my business so I can work the same amount of hours and make more money, right? Like we learn our value, and that increases our resources in the outside. The same is true for men in partnership. When we absolutely know our value and are absolutely willing to discern what we will and will not let into our bodies and our lives, then we just do not let the wrong one in anymore, right? And it's not, again, I'm not holding a boundary with all my might. I'm just clear as fuck, right? It's so different. So those things that you circled on your first concentric circles, that's what I call these circles. The things that you circled as being dissatisfied with, just check in with yourself. How much of my time, of my mental attention, of my physical resources, how much am I currently giving to that? Just check in with yourself. How much time am I giving to the thing that sucks my life force energy? How much attention am I giving to the man who's no longer here? Another question to ask yourself would be to identify where you are wasting time. And or where you're stopping yourself from the heart's desire. One thing we notice in Structure and Flow, I started it this fall with a friend who lives near me, and we talked a lot about sabotage, like avoidance and sabotage. Like, oh my gosh, you might want something, but you will find other things to do. And we just laugh. It's like, okay, the toilet's clean, the floor's vacuumed, but I didn't do that project that's at the top of my list. Right? We do that like all the time. Just watch yourself do that. So in Structure and Flow, what I love about it is that, like, day by day, hour by hour, like, it's just personal accountability and like you showing up for your next level. And you know, like, it just reflects you, like, you just know when you're not doing it. And then you get to make a choice. Am I going to keep doing this? Am I going to keep like sabotaging, wasting time, or what am I going to change? And so when we're talking about honoring your resources, and that's what we're talking about, let me just review what we just did. You identified your heart's desires. You looked at where your time was going. And if you wanted to, you could quantify that. You could look at how much time and energy is going into each of those areas. But you get that point. Then we looked at, okay, the clarity of what I know I want in alignment with where I want my life to go, where would my energy allocation be? And then the other concept that I don't think we're going to spend the time doing, because I want to open this up for questions and conversation too, but the other way that we really want to honor our resources as women, and to really come into a concrete understanding and relationship with our value, is to track our resources. And that sounds like nails on a chalkboard to some women. I know that, especially if we're like very overly feminine and not into like data. It can be like, you want me to do what? But in Structure and Flow, we actually track our time. And I'll show you the wheel. This wheel represents, there we go, represents 24 hours in a day. And the colors all represent these different categories that we track in. And so we track where we allocate our resources. And every day we look at what our priorities are and then what action we took. And we track it. And then every Sunday, I don't know if I said this yet, every Sunday we reflect on where the hours went, how we feel, and then we redo these. So it's like every week, fresh start, every day, fresh start. But when you start getting the values, like the numbers about your time, and then you start reflecting on how you feel based on your time. Let's say you're like always stressed about money and you work for yourself, or I'll use two different examples. Let's say you're always stressed about money. And as an entrepreneur, I've done this. Like, this was like me in 2019. Always stressed about money, but having a feminine process that takes all day. Like, I had a therapy session, I cried afterwards, then I had to take a bath, then I had to call a friend, then I had to, right? Like, that's the feminine getting lost in the, like, in the feminine, in the waters, right? Versus like, okay, I have to set some structure for myself so that I follow through with the activities that bring in the clients, that bring in the money. So I was like stressed about money as I would say, like, the collapsed feminine often is,
because it doesn't have a right relationship with the masculine. So this is where women look to the outside for men to rescue or men to provide. You hear a lot of like sacred feminine, this and that on the internet saying, oh, masculine provision. Oh, I just want masculine provision. There's a lot of shadow here because a woman without right relationship to the masculine will still project to the outside, hoping that it comes in from the outside. And that's where we get ourselves in entanglements and relationships that we wonder why it doesn't work. Totally done it. Totally done that. Okay. So, all right. So what else? Okay. So always trust about money. The other example that I was going to say was, well, I'll just use a more generalized one. Like, if we're always stressed about money as a woman, but we have tendencies like overspending or refusing to budget. Now, again, I'm talking to my former self here because it felt like scarcity to not be able to have those things. I get that. Like, we like beautiful things. But I wasn't respecting the resources. I wasn't honoring my resources that I had. And then I was putting myself into fight or flight about the finances. So yeah, this can just be like a Sarah Poet confessional. I'll tell you all the ways that the feminine and masculine have been fucked up on the inside of me. So everything I teach, I learned for sure. But where was I going with all of that? The tracking. The tracking is empowerment. The tracking is empowerment. The more comfortable I am with tracking, the more resources I have. Period. In structure and flow, I've had many women who are very, very feminine and resist tracking, resist budgets. I get it. It's like a trauma response sometimes when we try to do this at first. We just have to stick with it. And the psychological material, like the soul material that comes up when we have these realizations, we be with it. You know, we be with it. We have our processes, we have our therapists, we have our energy healers, we have our groups, right? This is what we're here for, to transmute this stuff. Okay, but we can't talk about self-worth or a woman valuing herself without her knowing about her own resources, which includes quantifiable time or quantifiable money, right? We have to track those things. So in structure and flow, there's a page every week where you can literally track your money in and your money out. And that's not a budgeting sheet, it's a practice. And the reason it's a practice is like, can you be with this? Can you be with the presencing of the tracking of the resources? And when we can do that as women, we're actually practicing honoring the masculine, not honoring some obscure like notion of God, not honoring, you know, man and the projection. We're just honoring the archetype of the masculine and getting better at it and coming into right relationship with it, which makes us stronger in our external relationships because we can discern. So I just said a lot there. And before we share, I actually just want to do the self-reflection kind of, wait a minute, do I? No, I don't want to do that next. So I'm just going to open it up to any kind of questions, comments, reflections, anything coming up for you. Any takeaways about honoring your resources?
Do we type or can we speak?
Oh yeah, either one.
Okay, cool.
Go for it.
I think my biggest takeaway was that the thing that is sucking my energy the most is what I'm dedicating my most time to right now. And that seems to be like social media is so stupid to me, right? But yeah, it sucks. Like, I think about all the time I spend on a day, whether I'm at work, just mindlessly scrolling, or doing something like that. And I'm like, what am I doing with my hours other than just staring into the void?
So where would you reallocate that?
I think I would reallocate it into what I'm looking at. Like, I constantly want to be outside. I constantly want to be focusing on myself and doing things that bring me joy rather than watching other people experience it.
Great. Question in the chat. Did you say that the tracking of income and spent money honors the masculine? I did, because the masculine, so when I'm saying structure and flow, I'm referring to masculine structure and feminine flow. And so the law of structure is, I attribute that to masculine, to consciousness, and to like the energy that brings things into form. So you'll hear me talk much more about the masculine, inside of structure and flow, potentially other places if you follow my work. But just kind of more basically, we associate masculine with things like logic, numbers, again, structure, holding the container. If anybody has others, you can put them in the chat. So we want these things, like we want structure in our life. We want safety. We want somebody to hold the container for us as women, hold the space, like, because we're really generally like big emotionally, like the feminine has no bounds. The feminine, by nature of the archetype, has no bounds. So the feminine doesn't put those bounds on itself. It actually likes them. Okay, now we haven't liked the way the feminine has been suppressed. We haven't liked tyranny and control and rape culture. And so many, many women have run from the masculine. But we can't actually hold wealth. We can't, we cannot build the lives that we want to live if we don't come into right relationship with structure. And so that's why the practice of tracking money is actually so healing. And I'm happy to share, I'll share this with the structure and flow group when we start, but I have this I learned to budget when I was like I was scared of numbers. I was scared of budgeting. It felt like tyranny. It felt like abuse. It felt like I did not want to be contained. I met with a female money coach, and she gave me a method that's both tracking the numbers and giving myself freedom. And that was the combination that allowed me to begin to heal my relationship with like where I associated money and numbers with my father's tyrannical control and manipulation. And so does that answer the question? I'm struggling with a lot of time being spent in a job that doesn't allow me time or financial freedom. Heard. So yeah, structure and flow is not just for entrepreneurs. So I would say that how this ends up changing is that you continually look to where are my resources going? Excuse me, how would I reallocate them? Where are my priorities? And you will begin to get stronger and stronger and stronger and more fortified in who you are and what you will stand for and what you will not stand for. And one day, the things that you will not stand for will have to pop out of your life. They just will. And so my encouragement would be to empower yourself by, really valuing your resources and optimizing the time that you do have for yourself, into, healing, empowerment, all of those things, and just whatever that optimizing means to you. And then it's like, you don't want to stay in the suffering. You don't want to stay in the collapse. You don't want to stay in the story of, I can't get out of this, right? So you want to look at the areas where you do have choice. Like, how do you optimize a Saturday? What are you doing after work? Are you drinking wine or are you making a good dinner? Like you have all of these resources that we've been talking about, these inherent resources. So how are you honoring each one in the next logical step for you, or the next intuitive step for you? So when I use this system, it's kind of become a way of life for me right now. I'm always optimizing. And so, we're always looking at physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And and taking action in those areas. Well, over the course of the evolution of time and energy and consciousness, at one point, it became very clear to me, okay, Sarah, you're not eating, I'm just giving examples of like real things that happen. Okay, physically, I can't optimize if I'm not exercising. So I started to do the class all the time. Then it was like, oh, okay, I can do this physical exercise, but it was clear that I wasn't optimizing because I didn't have protein in my diet. And so then I'm like changing my diet, right? And then it's like you're always meeting yourself at your next level, right? Like that's it, just your next level. And so, right now my physical optimization involves, I cut out black tea and coffee, and I'm waking up at 4 a.m. y'all, and doing Kundalini yoga. No, that took a minute, but I feel so awesome that I'm like, that's a fucking optimization of resources. Like, so you're going to know intuitively your next step to optimizing the resources that you have. But, like Catherine was saying, like once you get that hit, like, oh, I'm not optimizing my time by looking at social media. That's where accountability comes in, and like personal choice. Like, okay, now what? Now what are you going to do? And if you're tracking your time and you're tracking how much time you're spending on social media and you're looking at that shit, and at the end of the week, and you're like, whoa, I spent 10 hours scrolling social media and I feel like shit. Next week, you're going to scroll 5 or less, right? Because you're empowering yourself with the numbers, with the reality. Great. Other questions? All right. So I think I would just love for you to just take a moment in closing and write down for yourself first, and then pop it in the chat for us to see. What is one concrete next step you're going to take in honoring your resources? Resources of body, of money, those internal or external. What's one next step you're going to take to honor your resources? All right. See some people typing. I'm going to start by being really honest with myself. I love that. Morgan, I'm going to challenge you to give us one really concrete way that, because you got some honest material here tonight, like what's one way that you're going to optimize? Like what's the next step in optimizing your energy? Okay, you put it in there. Set up and track a financial budget for 2022. Well, that's a huge goal. That's amazing. Way to go. Awesome. I love the honest with yourself too. Like, yes, we want to do that. This may seem trivial, but I'm not changing my app timer to check Instagram tonight. Okay, all right. So like you have an app timer on, but you maybe been like overriding it. And so you're just not getting back on social media tonight. I love that. I'm going to commit to the tracking process. I love that. Oh, practice. I love that. Send a message to a boy letting him know I am not available to chat with him at all. Yeah. We're dancing over here. Fuck yes, that's some huge, huge work. Yes, way to go. Yes, yeah. If we honor and value the truth of who they are, who we are, what are the men going to do? What are they going to do? They're going to step the fuck up. They're going to step the fuck up because you're not available at the level of investment that he's giving you right now. You're just not available. So maybe he doesn't step the fuck up, but somebody else will. And then the men step the fuck up. Okay. This is why we have to do this, women. We're not asking, will you please value me? Will you please reflect to me that I am loved? Know what love looks like to you. And then just let the world know. Like if you're going to love me, this is what that looks like. Right? Oh, so powerful. Okay. I'm going to track my time on social media, mindless scrolling, when I am in fight or flight, very astute, versus the time I could be spending brain retraining and breathing through it. Yeah. Yeah. We women are in fight or flight a lot. I'm just going to normalize that. I was just digging through another layer of fight or flight tendencies. That's why I quit coffee and black tea. And so our tendency is really to be in fight, flight, freeze a lot of our time. And so when we can be with it, just like you said, retraining the brain and doing like the box breath that we did in the beginning, that kind of thing is regulating the parasympathetic so that we can make a more informed choice in the next moment. I want to start using the circles worksheet regularly again. A specific step is to stop watching YouTube videos in the morning and to use it to do practices that set me up for a good day. Great. Every minute counts, like literally every minute counts. I mean, it's like planetary ascension out here, y'all. Like every minute counts, right? My trigger response to burnout and PTSD overwhelm is to tune everything out and lose myself in whatever I'm looking at online. I'm going to be really honest about that and start taking my time away from those unhelpful coping behaviors. Yay. I quit coffee 6 months ago for that reason too, the fight or flight. Yeah. Beautiful. Amazing. Let's just like pause and honor how much respect y'all just gave yourselves. Beautiful. my personal accountability, what I just decided to do last week, my heart's desire is to finish and publish books. And I don't spend time writing the books like I need to. And so my inner masculine just said, all right, woman, we're moving this to the very middle of the day. So I have an alarm set at 1 o'clock, the alarm goes off. I make a tea. I might dance a little bit. I might like get myself into the feminine, into the creativity, and I sit down and I talk to the muse and I write, and it's amazing. And that feeling makes me want to do it again, right? But I had to retrain myself because, Lord, I have been like resisting this for a while. So, but I got to move forward on it. So that's what I'm taking accountability. That's my next step. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. So I'm going to send out this replay. Feel free to like share it with a friend if you're inspired by it. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to send this out yet this evening because I allocated that time for working after I tuck in my kiddo. And yeah, structure and flow, like I said, it's 30% off until, what day is today? It's 30% off until Wednesday at midnight. So right now it's only $6.95, which is pretty inexpensive for a system that delivers this much value. And it's that price because I put a lot of it online. So it's not as much of me live. There's a lot online that you can access, and then you come into the group, and Audrey and I will be answering your questions and celebrating with you in the group. And we do it for 90 days. And we're like, I don't know if I want to track my time. You know, when your inner feminine rebels, we bring you back in, right? So there's this really beautiful women's community that forms around this and supporting everyone, so that when you do have these intentions, we're like helping to hold that container of, yes, accountability, but also celebration. And so I hope to see you there. And there's also, I will mention, like there are also affiliate bonuses if like you and a friend join. So reach out to me for more information about that. And yeah, sign up early. So I'm not sure I'm going to print more than the 11 if they do sell out. So given like holidays and shipping and printing and all of that. So I'm excited. So let's do this. And it was a pleasure being here with you this evening. And I hope to get to know you so much more soon. And nice job honoring your resources. Okay. Yes, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. This is lovely, lovely use of time and mental and spiritual energy. Yes. That's what my hope was, Catherine. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you so much. You're so welcome. All right, y'all. Good night.